It's been a while since we've delved into the lore of Resident Evil characters. Today we're venturing into the deep contents of a sandwich product with no pickles, Jill Valentine. Surely this decision isn't based around the fact of a brand spanking new remake on the horizon, but I digress. Jill is one of the original heroine characters of the first RE game, so already she holds some great significance for people who has been with the series since the very beginning. Jill was originally designed under the code name of Jill Morrison as an initial concept in the early beta phases of Resident Evil 1. She almost virtually had the same exact appearance as the finished build, but with a few key differences in this particular prototype outfit. I can see she had a torn right pant leg, and also the outfit was originally white before being remodeled into the STARS outfit that we all know and love today with the signature blue. Fun fact, the Resident Evil 3 outfit, originally made with a tube top and skirt in mind, was meant to signify the Indian summer that was going on in Raccoon City, and it was extremely overwhelming with the heat, hence why Jill wore relatively less clothing before being redesigned with black jeans in the remake of Resident Evil 3. There's only bits and pieces that shape Jill's personal history before entering Delta Force. We get glimpses of her hobbies that mostly pertains to having interpersonal relationships with her current associates at the BSAA. It even signifies a bit of impatience on her behalf, as she would prefer fighting BOWs over being detoxified. We even have current evidence that Jill is possibly into being a dog owner due to that newly updated picture on her desk that shows a golden retriever in Resident Evil 2 Remake. It's even been confirmed that her heritage relates to French and Japanese ancestry, as confirmed by the developers. One more thing to note is that Jill was clearly taught to play the piano sometime before the STARS Mansion incident. The reason for this is because in both circumstances where Moonlight Sonata has to be played to open an entrance, it seems like Chris Redfield is simply unable to comprehend the notes, aka hitting the keys like a goddamn caveman. Jill, on the other hand, gets through these sequences efficiently without having to rely on the partner character. In the early 90s, Jill served in the US Army, ultimately leading to further recruitment with Delta Force later on. This explains how Valentine got her training to become the master of unlocking and obtaining further knowledge with bomb disposal. These skills ultimately caught the eye of Albert Wesker, team captain of the Special Tactics and Rescue Service. Jill was recruited as rear security, assisting the Alpha team on their first mission to a bizarre case of grisly murders within the woods of the Arklay Mountains. The situation definitely turned into flaming hell fast. We saw that Joseph Frost was the first Alpha team member to fall and become Purina puppy chow. Brad quickly decides to turn tail, living up to his infamous name of Chicken Heart by vacating the premises. As STARS Alpha is left for dead, they run away to the nearby mansion as their only safe haven. Jill was slowly see her best friends fall one by one to the undead monstrosities that lumbered around the complex. After examining many context clues around the dormitories and the labs, we quickly see Jill's suspicion arise as she catches wind of Barry's conversation with the unknown assailant talking about the fate of STARS and destroying them. Barry chalked it up to old age getting the better of him. We ultimately learned that this was a trap orchestrated by none other than the team captain himself, Albert Wesker. Wesker reveals to Jill that he was a double crosser towards STARS, allowing them to get Maul for research for combat data, as that is collected by Umbrella Incorporated, who he was planning to also swindle at the same time. Wesker is a triple timing dirty bastard, I guess. Umbrella is a multi-million-dollar pharmaceutical company that has no problem delving into some pretty sick prospects behind illegal human experiments. Wesker's plan is eventually foiled as Jill safely escapes into the helicopter helicopter after a hard-fought battle with the T-002. She flies off into the sunset, finally at ease after a night of terror she'll never forget. July 24th, 1998, Raccoon Forest. The following documents were obtained at a sanitarium owned by Umbrella Corps. Umbrella Bioorganic Weapon Publicity Material. Dev Code MA39 Cerberus. Dev Code MA121 Hunter. Dev Code FI3 Neptune. Dev Code T002 Tyrant. In addition to the above, it is believed that several other BOW were created by means of accidental infection. During the course of the test, it was discovered that the contagion is not limited to human beings and may pose a hazardous risk to plant and animal life forms. Effective means of controlling this contagion have yet to be found. Raccoon City Police Department, Stars Alpha Team, Jill Valentine. After the mansion incident, Jill healed from her wounds at Raccoon General Hospital, yet subconsciously, the nightmare seemed to linger as a form of post-traumatic stress for the character. August 7th, 1998. 2 weeks have passed since that day. My wounds have healed, but I just can't forget it. For most people, it's history now, but to me, whenever I close my eyes, it all comes back clearly. Zombies eating people's flesh, and the screams of my teammates dying. No, the wounds in my heart are not healed yet. After the surviving STARS members healed from their wounds, they immediately requested a full-scale investigation to RPD's Chief Irons, who promptly dismissed their allegations about Umbrella. Things were uneasy around the RPD at this point. There was even a scenario of Jill witnessing Chris Redfield's attack on another RPD co-worker for simply spilling coffee on him. A few days later, Redfield revealed to Valentine that his vacation was all a ruse after individual developments on the Umbrella case. August 15th, 1998, midnight. Chris, who has been on a leave of absence for a vacation, called me, so I visited his apartment. As soon as I walked into his room, he showed me a couple of pieces of paper. They were part of a virus research report entitled as simply as G. Then Chris told me that the nightmare still continues. He went on to say that it's not over yet. Ever since that day, he has been fighting all by himself without rest, without even telling me. It was silently confirmed that this investigation will continue to be handled by Chris, Jill, and Barry respectively without the input of their commanding officer. While it was Chris's goal to make a break for Europe, there was a certain 7-foot-tall monstrosity that had other plans for Jill Valentine, as she decided to stay in the city to do more research. As bad luck would have it for everyone involved, it didn't take too long for the entire city to become infected with zombies during the month of September 1998. This was all due to William Birkin laying the smack of down on Hunk's men after a fatal shooting caused him to inject the Golgotha virus. The rats in the sewer then contaminated the water supply, and it all went downhill from here like a 10-pin on league night. Due to the ex-STARS members knowing too much about Umbrella's findings, they decided to dispose of the team with an experimental tyrant infused with the NE parasite. This creature would later become known as the Nemesis, the relentless pursuer. Nemesis is actively programmed to eliminate the remaining STARS in town, so Jill is promptly on that list and fitted for a fresh toe tag. The remake of Resident Evil 3 mentions that Chief Irons potentially slapped the house arrest on Valentine, which in my opinion does make sense if Jill was actively snooping her nose around after this information was revealed to Irons with Umbrella's involvement. The chief has thick pockets under Umbrella, so keep that ass warm in the house unless you get the unexpected pizza boy to show up. Jill would later meet Carlos Oliveira, a member of the UBCS who becomes vital after things take a turn for the worse. Jill is introduced to a world of hurt, a world of viral hurt, since she becomes infected after a tendril attack by Nemesis. The T-virus starts to rage, alter her genome, and course throughout countless cells in her bloodstream as Carlos fights to obtain a cure. His efforts to defend Jill for days turns into desperate success as the vaccine to Jill subsides the effects of the T-virus for now. After one long nap for a few days and one extreme battle of Resident Evil 2, Jill Valentine finally awakens on October 1st to the sound of pouring rain. It's during this time in the remake that she actually encounters Robert Kendo, as evidenced by the bandage on her arm. She might be possibly post-T-virus infected at this point. Jill's letter to Kendo reads, "Kendo, it seems like you got your reasons for staying put, so I'll trust you to take care of yourself. Still, if things get worse and your other arrangements don't work out, you know where to find me. I'll do everything I can. Jill Valentine." I assume this note is going to correlate to the fact that Kendo's other arrangements, aka getting his family out of the city, didn't work well, and we'll finally see the conclusion to his arc because we didn't see the ambiguous gunshot that happened in Resident Evil 2 Remake when Kendo killed his daughter. Jill will witness the full events of Kendo possibly still being alive during October 1st when she forages for some guns. While Jill probably had dreams while she was in a coma, they were more than likely nightmares that foresaw possible zombification if Jill didn't have Carlos at her side. They both were still determined to get out of the city after Nemesis downed the chopper, so Jill and Carlos fought their way to a dead factory where Nikolai steals the final evac chopper. As the missile strike commences from Derek Simmons to sterilize Raccoon City, we see that Jill ultimately gives Nemesis some stars, or by layman's terms, she fed him some lead salad as she finally disposes the relentless pursuer once and for all. Jill is picked up once again by a former STARS comrade who might seem a little bit more familiar than you realize.
Thanks, you saved us.
I couldn't let you die.
Is it you?
Are you ready to finish this?
Jill flies off with Carlos and Barry, only to witness a grimmer spectacle as the BOWs and remaining survivors in the city were wiped off the map in a nuclear explosion. This hardens Jill's resolve as she continues to work with Chris Redfield as a part of a private anti-biohazard service. This group would be seen as a precursor group to the BSAA. In 2003, this group would take to Russia to raid an Umbrella complex, leading the heroes to fight a computer-enhanced tyrant known as Talos. Jill and Chris defeat the beast, but they come up empty-handed for Umbrella's crucial data disk, which is stolen by Wesker. Wesker handing in this evidence becomes the key component to finishing off the old remnants of the corporation as we knew it prior to 2003. Jill's work was far from finished, however, as we shift forward to the future in 2005. Revelations 1 does feel like a gigantic side story for all intents and purposes. To sum up Valentine's involvement, it seems like Chris Redfield and his new partner Jessica Shirawat is supposedly lost at sea. Their last known location was somewhere near the Mediterranean. A terrorist faction called Laveltro is threatening to poison the underwater ecosystem in the United States with a menacing new virus called T-Abyss. Through a series of conspiracies and corruption of the FBC, Chris and Jill reach Jack Norman, who is infected with the T-Abyss virus and morphs into what is supposedly a tyrant. He looks like a tyrant at least. The only way to expose the FBC director Lansdale is by going through this hideous monster. The pair defeats Norman and broadcasts all of the crimes from Lansdale to the rest of the world. Resident Evil 5 has a multitude of events that warps around Valentine through the course of the story. This initially begins with the add-on dubbed Lost in Nightmares. The BSAA receives an anonymous tip that involves the whereabouts centered around one of the Umbrella co-founders, Oswald E. Spencer. Jill and Chris are sent to apprehend the old man in an attempt to get information that will ultimately uncover the location of Albert Wesker. Once again, as fate will have it in all these games, it seems like Wesker got the old bastard first, and a fight ensued between the reunited STARS members. Unfortunately for them, Wesker's superhuman abilities proved to be far too great for Chris and Jill to handle, as they were both laid out on the floor of the Spencer estate. Before Wesker could finish Chris off for good, Jill sprung into action, tackling the ex-team leader through a plate glass window as Jill and Wesker fell into the abyss below. These two survived the fall, albeit heavily injured. Wesker then took Jill Jill in as a test subject with the intention to use her body as a vessel for the first breed of humans experimented on with Project Ouroboros. However, Wesker surely discovered something interesting in Jill's blood. The T-virus she obtained from Nemesis reactivated within her DNA after a subsequent coma. Due to these new antibodies that fought off viral resistance, it made Jill worthless as a test subject to Wesker. Wesker saw no point in including her in the first batch if progenitor strains could be battled inside of her, but he insisted to keep her around to gauge more results. These results ultimately led to a mind control project being created called the P-30. P-30 was nothing short of being a direct counterpart to Tricell's work on the Plaga enhancement. Not to be confused with P90X, but the P-30, instead of infecting the user with a parasite, this project would offer enhanced strength without mutations to the body. The owner would have no control or willpower included as part of a package deal here. It's not a Tricell party unless you're susceptible to manipulation, so this is all part of the plan. The drawback to P-30 was the fact that this drug was only a temporary venture as the drug wore off in the long run. A distinct apparatus was placed on Jill's chest to pump in the chemicals into her body until a solution was figured out so she could be perfectly kept under control. It is also assumed that the injection of the drug pigmented Jill's hair to become fully blonde, as we see once she's finally unmasked. Ultimately, Chris and Sheva Alomar discover Jill and Wesker deep in the heart of Africa as she's working with him under mind control. The pair square off as Wesker leaves Jill to take care of Chris for good. The apparatus is ripped off from Jill's chest as her mind reverts back to normal. She was fully aware of all her misdeeds while having no control over them. Ultimately, Josh Stone comes to help out Jill as she urges Chris Redfield to leave and finish off Wesker for good. Jill and Josh gain access to a helicopter via the Desperate Escape DLC, which leads to the final blow being put into place against Albert Wesker. Jill signifies to Chris that a rocket is on board the chopper and the rest is silence. It is unknown what Jill Valentine's future will be as we think about moving forward into the series. The last we heard from the character was the fact that she was in detox as she wrote to Barry Burton about the Kid Juju incident in Resident Evil Revelations 2. Everything I say at this point is purely hypothetical, but I think it would be about time to get Jill out of quarantine to have her fight against an immortal enemy like Alex Wesker in Natalia's body. The threat level of an immortality virus has to be the biggest threat in Resident Evil by far in terms of a metahuman existing like that who can't die. There's also the notion of Tensu existing as well, which seems to be the remains of Wesker's host hive capture force, the organization, and the connections all rolled into one. I think this corporation will rise like a phoenix from the ashes and form the new Umbrella Corporation. What do you guys think that will happen next due to all these revelations? I guess only time will tell, and don't even begin to get me started on the multitude of media that Jill is in. She's in Patchy Slot, live action movies, multiple RE games, crossover fighting games, a ton of things. If you're interested in the character, I would say go and check everything out that she's in and make an assessment yourself. So that is the lore on Jill Valentine wrapped up. Once again, thank you for 50 people voting in the poll when I made it, saying that they wanted to see this video when I was out of ideas, so I decided to put in all my effort and make this. Next up is the runner-up, which is going to be DMC3 HD, so that's going to be a full review, so look forward to that. Remember to like, share, subscribe, hit that like button, man. Hit that like button. It really helps me out in the end to get noticed in this crazy ecosystem known as the YouTube algorithm. And once again, I thank all you guys for coming by. Thank you for voting. Be sure to comment what you thought about the video, and comment like, where do you want to see Jill Valentine in the future, and what do you think about her lore? And once again, take care. I hope you had a great Christmas. I hope you had a great, Hanukkah, whatever you celebrate, and hopefully your new year is awesome. Take care.